Indiana are your 2025-2026 national champions. What a season we just saw from the Indiana Hoosiers. Welcome back to the Scoring from the 50 podcast. My name is Drew, your host. We have a huge episode of Scoring from the 50 out today. This just happened. The game just got over about an hour or so ago. I wrote the script and then I sat down and started recording. We have a full episode for you today. We got a reaction to the national championship game. We got my way too early 2026 top 10, and then at the end of the show, we will talk about some overarching big news for college football and where I see the sport going in the future. But first, before we get into it, I want to make sure I tell you guys to go down, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, show me your support, tell me what I can do differently, tell me what I can do better. Go down, tell me what you think about Indiana winning the national championship. Did you ever think that Indiana would ever win the national championship? Let me know your thoughts down below. But let's get right into it. All right, Indiana is your 2025 national champions. So what went wrong for Miami in this game? Miami did not run the ball well enough at all. They got outrushed by 131 yards to 110. It doesn't seem like a lot, but in a game where it's just inches here and there are what wins the game, that kind of stuff is how you lose a game, right? They didn't run the ball super well. Mark Fletcher had a really good game, but no one else for that Miami run game really showed up. The offensive line could have played a lot better. They should have gotten a lot more push on that Indiana D-line because the only really big play that helped how good that they ran the ball was that one big play that Mark Fletcher had that was 52 yards for a touchdown. So whenever it's 52 is almost half of their rushing yards on one play, they weren't good consistently enough to win this football game. Now, Miami also did not force a turnover. One of the biggest things we talked about going into this game was the fact that Miami needed to force Mendoza to move around in the pocket. You needed to force Mendoza to throw on the run. Don't let him run, but throw on the run. That's whenever he makes his biggest mistakes. And credit to Fernando Mendoza for not doing that, right? He sat in the pocket, got to the ball where he needed to get it to, didn't make a mistake, didn't make a dumb throw. He played extremely well. He's very solid all game. Now, Miami also lost the possession battle 36-23, meaning Indiana had the ball for over 13 more minutes than Miami did. To score points, you have to have the football, right? Miami did not have the football enough to score enough points to win this game, especially in the first half. It felt like Indiana was on the field the entire first half. Miami kind of evened it out in the second half, but that first half was completely dominated by Indiana. So you got to have the football a lot more. You got to be able to dictate how your team is playing and how Indiana is playing. That's a big reason why Miami lost this game. They also had way too many penalties. It felt like Miami was just shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again. There were multiple big plays that happened for Indiana that were right after penalties against Miami. Like that one play. It was 3rd and 15. You get an offsides by Ruben Bain, and then boom, you got a huge run from Ruben Himby, and they got a first down. That's a game-changing type of play. And there's another 3rd down where you get a defensive pass interference called on you. That was close. It was kind of iffy. I didn't love the call. But that's a huge play. That's a huge momentum shifter. That keeps a drive alive for Indiana, and then they ended up scoring on that drive. That's a huge deal. Those are the kind of mistakes that Miami's made all season. They've made a lot of mistakes like that under Mario Cristobal in general. They've been able to overcome those mistakes, but it bit them here in the national championship game. So Carson Beck also turned over the ball at the worst possible time. He only had one turnover, so good for him, right? We talked about him not turning over the ball was going to be a huge factor in this game, and he didn't. That's what made it close, right? But whenever it mattered the most, Carson Beck's last collegiate throw is going to be an interception, and that's how we're going to remember Carson Beck. Unfortunately for him, that is how we're going to remember him going forward. Now, he didn't play that bad. He went 19 for 32 with 232 yards and a touchdown, but that last interception is how we're going to remember him going forward in his collegiate career. Now, maybe he can do something in the NFL. He looks good, right? He looked a lot better towards the end of the season than he has his entire career, so he's clearly made steps going the right direction. But that was the worst possible time. I'm not sure if it was the wide receiver's fault. The wide receiver didn't look back, so it might have been a timing issue, might have been a miscommunication issue, but that last throw is what bit Carson Beck in the last moment. So I also want to give a little shout out to Mark Fletcher. He did throw a punch after the game, which I don't support. Obviously, he should have that remembered more than his performance because he played super well. He did have 112 yards for 2 touchdowns, which is a really good game. He ran really, really well. Most of it was on that big play, but it was all game. You had chunk plays here and there. But again, he's going to get remembered for throwing a punch after the game, and that's another downside too. Man, you get judged at your worst moment sometimes. I know Ted Lasso doesn't want us to do that, but that was a bad moment. You can't be doing that if you're Mark Fletcher, right? You've thrown a punch being a sore loser. Like, man, they beat you. They won a game. It was a close game, well-fought, hard-fought game. Indiana beat you straight up. You can't be sore loser like that. That's just not how you – that's not how a competitor is. That's not how a true competitor is. You shake their hand, like, okay, that's fine. I'll get you next time. Most of these players are going to be in the NFL. You can just say, you know what, fine, I'll get you next time. That's okay. That's okay. You can't be throwing a punch like that, all right? So Mark Fletcher, pretty good in the game, but after the game, what are we doing? Also want to give a shout out to Akeem Ezedor and Ruben Bain. They played out of their minds. It felt like Fernando Mendoza was getting hit every single play. It was just Indiana had a really good offensive game plan for that pass rush and was getting the ball out really, 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 really quickly. And that's a huge props to Indiana's coaching staff and having that game plan in place. But again, Akeem Ezedor, Ruben Bain were getting to the quarterback almost every play. So they showed up. Ruben Bain showed up. Carson Beck somewhat showed up. Didn't show up in the biggest moment, but really, really, really good game from those guys. I did want to at least give a spotlight to some really, really, really good games from Miami's players. Now, what went right for Indiana? One of the most important stats I think in this game was that Indiana had 20 first downs to Miami's 15, which I know doesn't seem like a big difference. They had 5 more first downs. Okay, like both teams had a lot of first downs. But that just means Indiana's staying on schedule and getting the ball where it needs to be. Just getting small plays here and there, doing what they need to do to move the chains. That's a really, really, really good effort by Indiana. It also shows that, Indiana's defense was making plays at the correct time. If we want further proof, let's look at third down. Miami was 3 for 11 on third down. That is a huge compliment to Indiana's defense and being able to not only get them to third down, but getting them to third and long. I think about halfway through that game, their average third down distance was around like 5.6 or something like that. I think that is what Chris Fowler said on the broadcast. That's a huge props to Indiana's defense for getting them behind schedule, behind the sticks, and making sure that they didn't have easy third down conversions like Indiana's offense did. So really, really, really good job for Indiana's defense. Mendoza also was really, really, really good in big moments. That run that he had on that QB draw, 4th and 5, huge play call. It sounded like after the game, Shane Dawson, the defensive coordinator for Miami, knew what play it was. He knew the formation. He knew that's their go-to out of the formation, but the call didn't get there in time. They snapped the ball. Fernando Mendoza makes a huge play, one of the craziest runs I've ever seen in the national championship game. That was insane. I was yelling my head off. It was a crazy play. Oh my gosh, I can't say enough about that effort that Fernando Mendoza had on that 4th and 5 touchdown to seal the game. What a play. That's a Heisman moment. That's a moment where you're like, yeah, that guy wins the Heisman. What a play Fernando Mendoza had right there. Kalen Black, the running back for Indiana, also had a really good game. It felt like he was getting chunk plays every single play. Really, really good job by not only Kalen Black, but also the Indiana offensive line. They weren't great in pass protection. They were good enough in pass protection, but they were really, really, really good on the ground tonight. They're opening up huge holes for Kalen Black. They did a great job all game. Kalen Black, he had 79 yards and 4.2 yards per carry. That's a huge reason why Indiana was able to win this game. Omar Cooper also had a really good game. 5 catches for 71 yards. That's really, really, really solid. He was there in big moments whenever they need it. But the receiver that I really want to talk about for Indiana, Charlie Becker, came through in the biggest moments possible. He only had 4 catches and only had 65 yards. Not the biggest game that you've seen, but man, those 4th and 3rd downs that he came up on, back shoulder right to him every single time. It was automatic for that Indiana offense. Those were huge plays. Those are going to get remembered. There's going to be that Fernando Mendoza run on 4th down to score that game-winning touchdown. But if any other plays get remembered, it's going to be Charlie Becker making those insane catches on the sideline. Huge, huge game for Charlie Becker. He showed up in the biggest way possible. And that's a huge compliment to Curt Cignetti because that's one of the only players on here that he recruited out of high school. He's not a transfer portal guy. He's not a holdover from the last regime. That's a guy that got recruited to Indiana by Curt Cignetti out of high school. And you just don't see that a lot on the team. It's not taking away anything from Indiana, but that's just not something that you see a ton on this Indiana team. A lot of it's transfers. A lot of it's guys that used to be on Indiana before Curt Cignetti got there. It's a lot of guys from James Madison. He's a guy that he recruited out of high school, got there. He's a sophomore now. Huge, huge, huge plays in the biggest moments. Can't say enough about what a good game Charlie Becker had. How is this possible? Indiana was 3-9 just 2 years ago. Not last year, but the year before. They finished 3-9, fired Tom Allen. How did this happen? Well, Curt Cignetti comes in. He brings in a whole new identity to this football team. He brings in a whole new mindset for this football team, and not only for the football team, but for the university. It feels a lot more like that Indiana University is paying a lot more attention to football than basketball right now. Look, They just made a huge hire in basketball. I don't know if you guys follow college basketball a lot, but they hired West Virginia's coach, who was really, really, really good at Drake a few years ago. So it seems like Indiana's doing good on the basketball side of things. But man, they are just funneling money into this football program, and it is paying off in a huge way. They just won a national championship. If you would have told yourself 10 years ago that Indiana was going to win the national championship, what would you have said? Think about it for a second. What would you have said to yourself 10 years ago? I would have laughed in your face. I was, 2020, at the beginning of 2026, I was 9 years old. I didn't have a great grasp on how this sport worked. I was just getting into Michigan football. Hadn't really gotten to the grand scheme of things, so I'm not really sure. But I knew as a Big 10 fan that Indiana was not very good. Even 9-year-old me would have laughed in your face if you told me that Indiana was going to win a national championship, but here we are. This should not be possible. This is a huge deal for not just Indiana, but also for college football in general. This is going to break every single excuse that any coach has ever made. There is no leeway. There's no excuse for any new hire, any existing coach. Like Dabo Swinney, what are you doing over there? You just went 7-5 when you won national championships 10 years ago. You just went 7-5 while Indiana's winning a national championship. What are you doing? Alex Skolish at Auburn, there's no reason why he can't go win right away. Same thing for John Summerall, same thing for Kyle Whittingham, same things for all these guys that just got hired at big programs, especially big programs. They have the funding that little schools still don't really have. I know there are more schools that have shots. You got the Texas Techs of the world. Miami's been heavily aided by NIL. Indiana, clearly, they just did what they did, right? But there's still a good sense there that the biggest programs will always have those resources. Indiana has to keep recruiting people to keep giving money. The big programs will always have those resources. Florida, Auburn, Michigan, Penn State, all making new hires this year. There's no excuses for coaches going into next season and the year after that. They should be winning right away. I understand not winning a national championship. That's fine. But being in the playoffs at those 4 schools, that's kind of the expectation, at least competing for the playoff at all 4 of those schools that I just mentioned. And if they're not, that's going to be a huge, huge, huge talking point going forward for those coaches. And if they can't even turn around in this day and age, they're going to get fired pretty quick if they can't. So Kursignetti, unfortunately for those guys, just broke every single expectation, every single excuse that they might have going forward. What a season that Indiana just had. I cannot give enough props to Kursignetti and the job that they just did at Indiana. The Hoosiers are your 2025 national champions. Now going forward, let's look to next season. I know it's early. I know even rosters haven't even been set yet, but man, we are in for another amazing season next year. I want to give you guys my top 10 from 10, starting at 10, all the way down to the number 1 team that I have going into next season. It might surprise you a little bit, so stick around. I want to make sure that you guys hear that. But let's get into my top 10 for the 2026 season. And at number 10, I have the Michigan Wolverines. I know they kind of struggled last year, but they went 9-3 with a coach that was DMing OnlyFans models during halftime of football games. Do you know how difficult that is to win with a head coach that is that distracted? That is a huge testament to players on that team, because that team is extremely talented. You got Bryce Underwood, who is an extreme talent with footwork issues. That's really his only problem. But they didn't have a quarterbacks coach. Michigan, I don't know if you guys saw this clip from Kyle Whittingham on Urban Meyer's podcast. They didn't have a quarterbacks coach for one of the biggest talents that we've ever seen in the Michigan Wolverines uniform. What were you doing? I can't even answer that. Just complete blasphemy in my mind that Michigan didn't have a quarterbacks coach. Well, now they do. They completely revamped that coaching staff. New defensive coordinator, almost a completely new defensive staff, completely new offensive staff. I think that there's some good things cooking in Ann Arbor, all right? The O-line is back. They have Andrew Marsh back, their number 1 wide receiver. They have Jamie French from Texas, who was a borderline 5-star talent coming out of high school last year. They have improved coaching across the board. The only downside to this is that they have to play Oklahoma, Indiana, and Penn State all at home, and then they have to travel to Columbus to play Ohio State and to Eugene to play Oregon on the road. So that's an extremely, extremely difficult schedule for Michigan. But I think that they have the talent, and I think that now they have the coaching to go and win most of those games and hopefully only lose 2, get into the college football playoff. That should be the goal for the Michigan Wolverines next year. Now at number 9, the Oklahoma Sooners are my number 9 team. Almost everyone is coming back from last year, okay? The defense is mostly coming back. That includes David Stone, who had 8 TFLs last year, who was really, really, really good as a sophomore. He had 43 tackles as well. He's going to be a huge difference maker in 2026. John Mateer is coming back. John Mateer has to be able to play like he did earlier in the season this year. He was insane at the beginning of the year. That game against Michigan, I was like, okay, this guy's going to win the Heisman. That's how good of a game that he had. If he can get that thumb healthy, and then hopefully they can get a few wide receivers there for him, I think that that's going to pay dividends for Oklahoma, and I think that they're going to be a really, really, really good team in 2026. Now, my number 8 team is a college football playoff team as well. Ole Miss, they have a lot of returning talent on offense. They lost Trinidad Chambliss because of the NCAA, which not 100% sure if that's going to work. It sounds like they're going to court again over that in the state of Mississippi instead of a federal national government. So we'll see. Not sure. I'm pretty sure that Trinidad Chambliss isn't going to come back, but not completely out of there. Even if he doesn't, I think that Deuce Knight is going to be really good in that offense. I think Pete Golding, I think he has a pretty good grasp. I think he's going to hire really well. He's got Joe Judge coming in. Yeah, it's a really good offensive coordinator. He's a really good defensive coach. We saw that all year at Ole Miss, even last year at Ole Miss. Their defense was not the issue. Pete Golding is a really, really, really good head coach. I think that Deuce Knight was also a former 5-star talent that went to Auburn. He was between Auburn and Ole Miss at the end of his recruitment. Ends up going to Ole Miss through the transfer portal. I think he's going to be really good for Ole Miss. I think that's a really good quarterback. And they also have Quan Lacey coming back. They have Deuce Alexander out there, a wide receiver. I think that they're going to have a really good offense. They're replenishing really well. The offensive line is mostly coming back. The defense is coming back. I'm really, really, really excited for what Ole Miss is going to do next year. I think the biggest problem is that they're going to have to replace their sack leader, and they're also going to have to replace TJ Daughtry, which was a green dot middle linebacker last year. Those guys are going to be tough to replace. But I think that they can. Maybe not just specifically one player, but I think that they can replace them in the aggregate. I think they'll do a really good job at Ole Miss next season and be a top 10 team. Now at number 7, I have the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. After just barely missing the playoffs this year, I think they're going to get in next year, all right? They're not losing a ton outside of Jeremiah Love, which is a big loss. The coaching staff is all coming back. Marcus Freeman said no to some NFL head coaching jobs. They're currently on a 10-game win streak because there are only 2 losses this year. We're at the very beginning of the year. CJ Carr is back. They added a ton out of the portal. Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, 2 5-star wide receivers from Ohio State. Tyrone Gray also played as a true freshman at Oregon. He's a really big get. Keon Keeley, the linebacker from Alabama. Jaden Sanders, DJ McKinney, Jadon Blair. All of those are 4-star transfer portal players, all going to play a huge impact, especially in that secondary. Like I just said, Jaden Sanders from Michigan, DJ McKinney, and Jadon Blair, that secondary is going to be really, really, really good. And I think that Notre Dame defense is going to be a lot better than it was this year. I think that offense, you're getting CJ Carr, you're getting him Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, 2 dudes that everyone wanted out of high school. Those are 2 guys that are going to play a huge factor in the Notre Dame offense next year. Can't wait to see what they do. They've already got a ton of momentum. They got something to prove, that's for sure. They got a chip on their shoulder. They believe that they got screwed this year, and maybe they did. I don't think that they did. I think the committee screwed them with their process, but I think that they got the right teams in. So we'll see. I think Notre Dame's going to be a really, really, really good team next year. Now at number 6, I have the Texas Tech Red Raiders, all right? They are losing a quarterback, Brevin Morton. That's going to be a big loss, but they're replacing him with someone who I think is better. Brendan Sorsby from Cincinnati had a really, really, really good season, led them to a 10-win season there in Cincinnati. He's a really good quarterback. Not only is that, but they're also getting Malcolm Simmons, a wide receiver, Mateen Ibaragba from Wake Forest, the lineman. He played really good this year. Austin Romaine, the linebacker from K-State, and then Wendell Gregory, one of the best edge rushers in the portal from Oklahoma State. Those guys are even better than the portal players they had last year, so I think that they're going to play a huge factor in Texas Tech's team in 2026. Not only that, but the coaching staff is also returning, which you can't say about some of these teams that are higher on my list, so I think that there are a lot of good things going on in Lubbock, Texas Tech. I think that oil money is coming in. They're doing a great job of getting talent, retaining coaches. They're going to be really good in 2026. Now, my number 5 team in 2026 is the team that we just got done talking about, the Indiana Hoosiers, the reigning national champions. They are my number 5 team heading into 2026. They're losing a lot, but they're also gaining a lot from the portal. Elijah Surratt, Fernando Mendoza, and Fisher, they're all leaving, but they're replacing that with Josh Hoover, the quarterback from TCU, Nick Marsh, the wide receiver from Michigan State, Toby Osunsami. I think that I said that right, but he's from K-State, a linebacker from K-State. Those guys are going to be really, really, really good replacements, and I think arguably better coming in than they were last year. Fernando Mendoza was really good at Cal, but I don't think he was as good as Josh Hoover was at TCU. I don't think that Nick Marsh, I think that Nick Marsh is better than Elijah Surratt whenever he came into Indiana. I think that Toby Osunsami is really good. I think that those guys are going to be even better than the team that they just had coming in. Now, currently, obviously, the players that just won a national championship are better than those guys. But I think coming in, they have a higher starting block than they did last year. So I'm really excited to see what Indiana does with, I think, some better talent than what they had last year. So Kirsten Eddy and that coaching staff, anything's possible. They could go back-to-back. You just never know in this world of college football. You can't say that and then not mention Indiana returning almost all of their coaching staff. I mean, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator are both back for next year. Kirsten Eddy's obviously back for another year. And this is going to be a really, really, really good team for years to come, not just in 2025. Now, continuing in my top 5, the number 4 team I have is the Texas Longhorns. Yep. Here we go again. We're getting some hype for the Texas Longhorns. Another year, Arch Manning's back. Oh my gosh, he's a Manning. He could win the Heisman. Well, he could, okay? It's hard not to talk about this guy. He improved a ton last season. They're improving their offense. They're improving their offense a ton in the transfer portal. They're losing a lot on defense. Elijah Barnes transferred. Colin Simmons, one of the best edge rushers in the country, is leaving. But they also replaced that a bit with Rasheem Biles. He's coming back. And then Ian Jefford, also from Arkansas, is a really, really, really good player. They both were very high impact players at Pitt and Arkansas, respectively. So those are really good gets to replace that talent that they had on defense. I don't know if the defense is going to be as good, but I think the offense is going to be a lot better. Okay, the offensive line hasn't gotten better yet, but I have a suspicion that they're going to get a really, really, really good offensive tackle from Colorado, if I had to guess. I think they kind of got desperate after they didn't get Andrew Sprague from Michigan. I think that offensive tackle, Jordan Seaton from Colorado, if I had to guess, I think he ends up in the burnt orange next year. So I think that's going to be a huge, huge, huge plus to that offensive line, which was a huge weakness. Probably their worst position group last year was that offensive line. So getting a guy like Jordan Seaton, who's going to be a top, I'd say probably first-round draft pick. I mean, he's going to be really good playing on Sundays. That's going to be a huge get for Texas, improving their worst position from last year. On top of that, you're getting Cam Coleman, number 1 player in the portal from Auburn, one of the best wide receivers in the country all season. Hollywood Smothers, flipped him from Alabama. He's from NC State, had a 900-yard season last year. And then you're pairing all that with Ryan Wingo, one of the already best wide receivers in college football. Arch Manning's coming back. He was insanely better at the end of the year than he was at the beginning of the year. And then a young O-line with Jordan Seaton is going to make for a really, really, really good offense. The only question I have is how good can that defense be? They could be a lot better. Rasheem Biles is a really good get from Pitt at linebacker. I just don't know if they're going to be able to replace the talent that they had last year. They lost a lot of guys, especially a guy like Colin Simmons. That's going to be tough to replace. But again, that offense is enough for me to put him at number 4 in my 2026 top 10. Now, getting into my top 3, I have the Georgia Bulldogs. They retain their coaching staff, which is very hard to do, and I cannot say that about the 2 teams in front of them. C.J. Allen was an All-American. He left on that defensive line. Christian Miller, again on that defensive line. That's 2 huge losses, but they're replacing that pretty well. Zachariah Branch and Dylan Bell also are leaving the receiving room, which scares me a little bit. I don't want Georgia to go back to what they were in 2024. They couldn't catch a ball. It's a big reason why Carson Beck struggled so much while he was a Bulldog. So I really, really hope that they can replace some guys. I think they're doing a good job with Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, which is weird that someone transferred from Georgia Tech to Georgia. That shouldn't be allowed, in my opinion. That's just insane. But that's a really, really good player at about 400 yards that year. He's one of their best top receivers at Georgia Tech. That's a big get for a position group that's losing quite a bit. Not only are they also getting Isaiah Canyon, but they're also getting Amaris Williams from Auburn, who is a really, really, really good player at Auburn. He's very, very solid his freshman year. I think that Nate Frazier, the O-line, Gunnar Stockton, they're all coming back. Those are really, really, really good gets for that offense. I think they're going to be just as good as they were this year, if not maybe even a little bit better, especially with Isaiah Canyon coming in. I'm really excited to see what Georgia does. I really, really, really enjoyed watching Georgia play this year. That was one of my favorite Georgia teams I think that I've ever watched. I mean, the 2021, 2022 teams, those were really fun to watch, but especially that 2021 team, that defense, I mean, that was insanely good. But, I mean, the past few years with Carson Beck, I mean, you just didn't really enjoy watching them. You know what I mean? I think, does that make sense? Like, Georgia was one of those teams that, you just wish that they were a little bit better. Felt like that they needed to be more of a team, more of a team-centered team. They needed to be more together, more one goal, one mind, team, brotherhood focused, and they just really weren't whenever Carson Beck was there. Maybe that's not Carson Beck's fault. Clearly they were in Miami. Maybe that's not Carson Beck's fault, but it was a big factor in me not really enjoying them. This year, though, in 2025, they were a team that felt like they were close-knit, tight-knit, really, really, really good group of guys, and they're mostly all coming back next year, so I'm really, really excited to see what that team can do in 2026. Now, my number 2 team, and it was really close between these top 2, but my number 2 is going to be Ohio State. They are returning everyone on offense except for Carnell Tate, which is a huge loss, but I mean, whenever you got Jeremiah Smith, I think you'll be just fine. They're losing a lot on the defensive side, but they're not losing as much as they did last year, which I think is already there. Again, like Indiana, they have a higher starting block than they did last year. Keontae Jackson is back for that defense. He's going to be really good. James Smith and Quay Russaw from Alabama, 2 former 5-stars, are going to be really good to replace on that defense. To replenish on that defense. Now, Hunter Welching is also coming in from Northwestern, the tight end, to replace Max Clare, so I think that's going to be a really, really, really good get from Northwestern. Terry Moore is coming in to help the secondary from Duke, who had 71 tackles last season. They're just replenishing on that Ohio State defense. They're replenishing the tight ends. They have some absolute studs on that defense now, just like they always will. It's Ohio State. They will always have guys like that. The only question I have is, what impact does Brian Hartline have leaving that team? Brian Hartline took the head coaching job out South Florida. That's really good for him. But how integral was he to Ohio State's success? Whenever he got promoted offensive coordinator this past season, he did a really good job. He got the ball to his wide receivers. He ran the ball decently well. Whenever they needed the ball, they ran the ball. He wasn't scared to do that. So he has been a key part. And then once he leaves, then they lose. Once he takes his job at South Florida, then they lose 2 in a row. Is that correlation or causation? That's something that I have a question about going into 2026 for Ohio State. Ryan Day as a head coach hasn't been the best play caller. He was good as an offensive coordinator, but ever since he got that head coaching job, he hasn't been quite as good calling plays. So I question, is he going to be calling plays next year? I think if he is, that's really good for Michigan because he was calling plays whenever Michigan went on that long run. So we'll see for Ohio State, but I think that they're going to be really good, competing for a national championship for another year in 2026. And now my number 1 team going into 2026, and this probably will change. I'll probably change my mind at some point during the offseason, but Oregon, they are my number 1 team. They got Dante Moore coming back. They got Corey Moore coming back. They got Jordan Davison, the running back, coming back. They got Mateo Uiagalelei coming back. They have a ton of players coming back. Dylan Thieneman, one of the best safeties in the country, he's leaving, but they got Coy Parrish from Minnesota to replace him, which is one of the top 15 players in the transfer portal. That's a huge get. They have Andrew Olesh coming in to replace Kenyon Sadiq, who is a big loss. And then on top of that, they got Aaron Scott from Ohio State. They got Dante Robinson to come in to help that defense. They have a ton of players coming back. I think they're the most talented team in the country. They feel a lot, I don't know if this is a good thing, but they feel a lot like Penn State did coming off of the national championship last year. Just bringing back a lot of dudes that have gotten there, haven't gotten over the hump, but they've done a really, really good job retaining guys, getting good portal players. They have a really good coach in Dan Lanning, but the problem that I have with them is that they have to replace both their offensive and defensive coordinators next year. Now, you can say all you want about this offense and all the talent that they have coming back, but it's going to be really tough to replace those coordinators at Oregon. So not quite sure what they're going to do there. But again, I think they have one of the most talented rosters in the country. That's why I have them at number 1 in my 2026 top 10. Now, moving on from my top 10, I want to talk about an article that got released last week by Ross Dellinger. He had a really good piece about this meeting that some Big 10, SEC, a lot of conference, NCAA, a lot of big, important people got together and had a meeting. And they talked a lot about different things about the sport. They talked a lot about leaving the NCAA. Apparently, there has been a committee already created to investigate if leaving the NCAA would be better than being in the NCAA. So that's a big deal. You have a lot of talk about going to 16 teams, going to 24 teams in the college football playoff. If you can't tell by the sound of my voice, I don't really like. So let's hit on that for a second. First, I want to talk about the 16 team versus the 2014 playoff. First off, both of them are wrong. Did you guys just watch that 12-team playoff? Every single game was good outside of the Ole Miss game against Tulane and the Oregon game against James Madison, which we all saw coming. If we get rid of the auto bids for the group of 5, just get rid of auto bids in general, I think that that's going to pay dividends for college football playoff, and I think it's going to make it just a perfect playoff. There's no need to expand it. It's just like the NCAA tournament. They want to get it bigger, like, oh, we'll do NCAA tournament at 64 teams. We can go to 24. No. You can't compare two sports that are completely different. In college basketball, you can have 64 teams because you can play 2 games in a weekend. You can't do that for college football. You don't have a team that is possible to make it upset, like an Oakland beating a Kentucky. You can't have a VCU going to the Final Four in college football, because at least you can say about Indiana, well, they were in a Power 4 conference this whole time, right? You're not going to have a Missouri State going to a national championship. You're not going to have a Ferris State going to the national championship. Like, that's just not how this works, right? Football is different from basketball. So any person that tries to create that as an argument has no idea what they're talking about. That is a completely bad argument, and one that if you see it on Twitter, just ignore it. If you see it on TikTok, just ignore it. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about people who argue that. But the teams that the playoff that we just watched, every single game was close. I mean, Indiana killed Alabama. They kind of killed Oregon, right? So I guess those weren't great. But I mean, Indiana was just that good. Indiana's the national championship. If you're going to have a team that blows out another team, it should be the national champion, not Ole Miss, who loses in the semis, right? Like, if you expand this anymore, it's just going to create this safety net for these teams that aren't good enough to make the college football playoff. Like, I'm sorry, Notre Dame, you lost the 2 games that meant the most on your schedule, scheduled some absolutely terrible opponents other than that, and then you didn't get in. You didn't have a good enough resume. Same can be said about Texas. Anyone that thinks that Texas should be in, well, you lost 3 games. One of them was to Florida, who was horrible this year. That is just creating a safety net for those teams that aren't good enough. There are certain teams that, man, you have, even if you are good now, even if you are probably better than some of the teams that are in the playoff, you have to earn it on the field, man. You have to play well enough whenever it matters the most. And to me, what matters the most in college football is the regular season. Any true college football fan will agree with me on this. What matters is Saturdays in the fall, not Mondays in the winter, not Thursdays and Fridays in the winter. That's not what matters in this sport. What this sport is built on is college football, Saturdays in the fall, tailgating with your family, watching the leaves fall from the trees, not sitting at this sterile, concrete, weird environment in Miami. Doesn't really show what this sport is really about. So there's no reason to expand this playoff, because if you do expand the playoff, you're just lessening the importance of the regular season, which I think is the worst, because the most important thing is beating your rival in college football. Beating your rival, playing in your conference, winning your conference, that's what's important to me. That's what's important in college football, and that shouldn't be lessened by a fake, sterile, just corporate national championship game or a national college football playoff. Like, you can't lessen the importance. You can't lessen the importance of the most important thing in the sport. So that's why I don't think that you should expand the playoff at all. That's why I was against expanding the playoff to 12. Now, I'll put my hand up. I was wrong about that. This 12-team playoff, I have loved every second of, besides the Oregon and the Ole Miss games. Those weren't great. But outside of that, this 12-team playoff has been great. I've loved every single second of it. The top 5 matchups in the regular season, they feel a little less important, but man, they still get the attention. They still get my attention. They're like, dude, I can't wait to go watch Alabama and Georgia play tonight. Michigan wasn't even a top 10 team whenever they played Ohio State, and man, it felt like the whole world revolved around that game. Alabama and Auburn was completely out of it. Alabama needed to win that game to get into the playoff. That game felt like huge. I mean, it's a rivalry game. They got more importance put on it. So the 12-team playoff is good. But I mean, if Alabama was in a 16-team playoff, they're like, whatever. Even if they lose this game, they're still in. So what does it matter? Do not expand this playoff. There's no reason to expand the playoff, and I'm kind of glad that they're disagreeing so that it stays at a 12-team playoff for another year. That's going to be really, really, really good for the sport. I can't wait to see what this 12-team playoff does. Please don't expand it. It's probably going to go to 16 teams. I think I've probably lost that battle on this already, but if it expands to 24, I think it's going to be time for a lot of people to really take a look at why they watch this sport. I think Go look at NASCAR. Whenever you take for granted the fans and take for granted that fans are always going to be there, always going to be supporting their people that they enjoy, like they love, go look at NASCAR. They took advantage of, they thought that these people would just enjoy NASCAR and just watch NASCAR no matter what, just keep watching. And they took that advantage, tried to make more money off of it, tried to make more money off the backs of these people who enjoy watching NASCAR. When was the last time you thought about NASCAR? In the 2000s, 1990s, it was the number 2 sport in the country. That, to me, someone my age, is blasphemy. No one understands that. Now, anyone I talk to, I think they watch NASCAR. I know you look at my old setup and you see NASCAR cars in the background. Well, I watched NASCAR whenever I was 3 or 4, back in 2010, 2011. That's why most of the cars down there, if you look closely, they're all from 2011, 2012, 2010. That's whenever the sport was good. They take advantage of people like me. Like, I was just a kid, but I can understand that you take advantage of people like me and people like the hardcore NASCAR fans. Well, they made it super confusing. They took advantage of it, tried to make a playoff. They expanded their playoff a ton. That sounds familiar. You take advantage of those people and just try to make more money off of them. Eventually, they're going to leave. Now, football, it's harder to do that too because football is football in America, but eventually people are going to look at me like, man, this isn't what I enjoy. This isn't what I fell in love with. This isn't what I want in college football. And I think that people eventually are going to start leaving the sport. I don't think I'll be one of them. I think I'll be sitting in front of this camera for a long, long time. But I think a lot of those casual fans are like, I don't know, maybe they went to Indiana and they're like, man, that's awesome. Well, maybe they go 9-3 one year and they just, whatever. Like, I don't feel like watching because it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel the same watching my team that I used to love and used to just give my heart to every Saturday for. A lot of people are losing that. A lot of my friends are losing that. I've noticed a lot of people losing interest more and more in college football. More of my friends that, liked college football, they're big NFL fans, but didn't really love college football the way that I do, but I could still hold a conversation with them. Nowadays, it's less. It's a lot less people that I can just go and have a casual conversation with about college football because they're like, man, it's just not what it used to be. It doesn't have the spark that it used to have, and it's only going to get worse if you continue to take advantage of these people. Now, let's get off of that kind of somber note, all right? I don't think college football is going anywhere, and I think we're a long ways from what happening to NASCAR happens to college football. But I think we're on the path that NASCAR went, and I want to avoid that. But let's get off that somber topic. Let's go talk about a topic that's going to be pretty controversial. Should the Big 10 and the SEC leave the NCAA? This has been a question for years, about 10 or 15 years. Should we just leave the NCAA in the past? I think we should. A lot of them are talking about just going to play in their own conferences. The Big 10 plays in the Big 10. We have a Big 10 champion. SEC goes and plays in the SEC. We have an SEC champion. And that's it. I don't think that that's what college football fans want. I think we like the openness of college football. And so I think that if we were going to just 2 conferences, NFC, AFC type of model, but they didn't play in the national championship, or even if they did, really, that just isn't college football. It's like I just talked about. I mean, you do that, you're going to lose a lot of fans, man. You're going to lose a lot of the James Madison fans. You're going to lose a lot of the Indiana fans. I guess a better representation of that is Purdue now, right? Because they're kind of bad. They're like, man, if Purdue doesn't have really a shot to ever win in the Big 10, or like maybe a Texas Tech fan or an Oklahoma State fan, there's no reason for them to watch college football at that point. So, in my opinion, no. Don't go to those 2 big conferences just playing themselves. I think that would ruin the sport pretty fast for a lot of people. Now, what I think, and I'm kind of introducing an idea that I haven't really heard from other people before, but I kind of want to get you guys' thoughts on it. What if the college football went to a British Premier League style of system? Now, let me explain. Hear me out. I know a lot of people are probably yelling at me right now, but listen to this. Okay? So, a lot of people, if you don't know, the English Premier League is just the top division in soccer in England, right? They have about 18 to 20 teams in that league that all play against each other, and then at the end of the season, you got a champion, right? Well, below that, if you finish in the bottom 3 teams, then you get demoted to what's called the English Football League Championship. That's the lower league. That's the second division, right? Those teams aren't as good, but they're still playing for a championship, right? Then you go lower. Then it's League One, right? So they have even more teams that are kind of even worse, but they're still competing against like-minded teams that are around the same skill level. They're still competing against them. And then you go down another one, and it's the EFL 2. Same thing. Limited amount of teams, similar talent, similar resources. Then you go one step lower, and that's kind of where it gets complicated, right? You go into what's, I'm blanking on what it's called, but they go into kind of division-based, right? So it's the 5th division. They have, I believe, a north and a south, or maybe an east and a west, not quite sure. But they have 2 divisions, and then they have 2 divisions, and then you go into playoff, right? If you're in the top 2 or 3 of that division, then you go up to EFL 2, what we just talked about. EFL 2 is the 4th division. Then if you're in the top 3 of the 4th division, you go up to the 3rd division, which is the EFL 1. Then if you're in the top 3 of that, you go up to the championship. Then if you're in the top 3 of that, you go up to the Premier League. What if college football had a system like that? You don't have to have, 18 to 20 teams. You can have way more than that. I would probably put 30 to 40 teams in there just in that 1st division. Then the teams that play, they all play in the same division. The top 30 to 40 teams are all playing in the same league. They all play each other, so you're not really having that weak schedule argument anymore. It gets rid of that. And then you go into a playoff that kind of looks like the NFL, but it's not quite the NFL, right? Because you still have those teams, that are playing each other. And you can break this into divisions if you want. I think this would be really, really, really good to keep the playoff intact. I think the playoff would then be at a reasonable amount because you can't let, every freaking team in there. And then, but not only that, it gives you really, really good competition within that one league that plays each other, plays a ton, and then goes and plays in playoffs, plays the same teams, and then you go win a national championship. You can have protected rivalries. You can even throw divisions in there if you want. There's tons and tons of nuances, but I think that would be the best scenario for college football because it gets rid of the NCAA. Everyone's in their same rules because part of the issue with going to a 2-league system and then playing a national championship game would be that the SEC couldn't regulate what rules they're following because they can't decide what the Big 10 is following. So if the Big 10 has no rules, then that's putting the SEC at an advantage if they do have rules, right? So if the SEC says, well, you can't do this. You can't have interleague transfers. You can't pay players over this certain amount. But the Big 10 doesn't have any of those rules. They pay your players as many as you want. You can transfer wherever you want. Any player can play anywhere. You can just do whatever you want in the Big 10. Well, then the SEC is at a huge disadvantage. And then the Big 10 team is going to be way better than the SEC team in the national championship every single year. So that would be the issue with creating it into 2 separate leagues. Now, if you had it into one league, this college football Premier League type system, then you have interleague. You all are under the same thing. You all have the same rules. You're all playing the same teams. You're all playing the same playoff. You're all playing at the same level, right? So I think that would fix a lot of issues for college football. And then below that, you can have the second tier. You can have the teams that, if they did play in the college football playoff, they wouldn't be quite as good, right? But whenever they go in, they can have their own playoff. They could have their own second tier playoff. If you're in the top 5 or so, you can go into the top league. And then you have a chance to compete for a national championship. So you still have that promotion. You can go play for a national championship if you're good enough, right? If you can prove that you're good enough, you can go win a national championship. In my opinion, college football gets compared to 2 sports. It gets compared to the NFL because it's the same sport. But it also gets compared to European soccer quite a bit because of the fan bases, the passionate fan bases. You don't get that anywhere besides soccer or college football. And also the sizes of the stadiums. It's mostly just about the fans and the resources and the money that's in it. But I think another way to compare that is just the way that European teams celebrate getting promoted to the higher league. I think if you saw something like that in college football, I think people would be just as happy knowing that, man, next year, we just won a championship, but man, next year we can go compete for a national championship. That would be something that I would absolutely love to see. And I think if you guys don't just sit down and be like, oh man, well, that's not the way it used to be. Well, get over yourself. Obviously it's never going to go back to the way it used to be. We have to get new ideas into the sport. We have to get ideas that are revolutionary. This sport is broken right now. The way that things are going, players are getting financially hurt. Coaches are working their asses off whenever they shouldn't have to be. We got the NFL draft, we have NFL free agency, and we have the NFL Super Bowl going on at the same time, just from them to college football, and it's all at the same time. That's broken. That's a broken sport. That's something that doesn't work. If you leave the NCAA, go into something that is more centralized and more everyone's under the same thing, I think that would work out really, really, really well. And I think that this would give an opportunity. It wouldn't be getting rid of teams. It would give everyone an opportunity. I know this would probably never work because conferences are what run the sport right now, and you're going to have to get rid of conferences in this scenario. But, man, if you did this, I think it would be great. If you guys have a downside, please leave your comments below. Because, sure, for one season, James Madison wouldn't be able to compete for a national championship. I mean, they would in their own division. You can say it's their Division 2. I mean, you don't want to say D2 because obviously that implies that they're not Division 1. But, like, I'm going to call it the championship or something. I don't know, call it the same thing that the Premier League does. Just call it the League 2. They would be able to compete for a championship. And then not only would they be competing for a national championship, they win that championship. And on top of that, you're saying to yourself, you get to go compete for a national championship the next year. I think that that's a great thing for college football. Everyone's playing for something. Even if you're terrible, you're still like, oh my God, we can't get relegated. Like, we can't go down to a lower league because then we don't even have a chance to win a national championship next year. And honestly, for fans like in the top leagues, like in Auburn, like a Miami fan or a Florida fan. I guess Miami's a bad example of this, but like Florida this year, Wisconsin this year, Oklahoma State this year, I don't feel that bad for them because they've had moments that are amazing. They've had moments like that. And you know how much it would hurt? I think it would just cause more emotions into the sport. I think that's a great thing. I think more emotions into a sport like college football that is an emotion-based sport would be perfect for college football. Let me know your thoughts down below. I have a lot of ideas here. Not sure if it's going to go over well with some fans here, but we'll see. Just leave me your thoughts down below. I want to hear some opinions on this. But that is going to do it. This is a much longer episode than I had last time. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. We made it through a whole season, complete season on the Scoring from the 50 podcast. And I cannot thank you guys enough for what a great season it has been. I've gotten a ton of support. It's been a really good past month. Really excited to see how this podcast grows in the off season. Kind of excited I get to do kind of whatever I want. I think that's going to be really, really fun. And I hope you guys stay tuned, stay subscribed, keep hitting the like button, keep showing your support. And thank you guys so much for watching. And I'll see you guys next week.